A few months ago, I began using the expression BC in a new way. In the Western world, of course, traditionally BC means before Christ, and therefore we Jews generally prefer BCE, before the Common Era, to refer to that time period. But since March, I now use BC to mean before coronavirus. The time we live in now could therefore be called CE, the coronavirus era. After all, it does seem like we're living in a whole new world, a whole new era. Our entire lives have been turned upside down. For all too many of us, this has meant losing our jobs and our livelihoods, with virtually no options to find new employment. Humans are also by nature social creatures. We seek to gather together in large groups to celebrate, to show support in times of loss or crisis, to learn together, and of course, to pray together. And right now, virtually none of that is possible. It is literally an alternative reality that we're living in. And then we have added a new layer of pain and suffering when we all watched a black man die on camera. That, I hope, will also have a profound and lasting effect on our society as we finally confront our nation's history of slavery and oppression, and hopefully it will cause us to re-examine our own prejudices and our own biases, and to finally recognize the full humanity of everyone, which in turn, hopefully, will enable us to repair the intergenerational damage this history has caused. So in this new era of CE, the coronavirus era, all of the stories and laws that we read in the weekly Torah portions take on a new layer of meaning. For instance, almost 2 months ago, we read the Torah portion Kedoshim in the book of Leviticus. It opens with God's dramatic charge to the Israelites, Kedoshim tihiyu ki kadosh ani, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. This emphatic declaration lies at the very center of the Torah, and in many ways it could be seen as the ultimate charge to the Jewish people, the ultimate purpose and goal of Judaism, of living a Jewish life. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Notice that God does not say, you are a holy people because I am holy, but rather you shall be holy because I am holy. And the statement therefore implies that we are not now holy. Rather, we are commanded to strive to become holy. It implores us to fulfill our part in the contract with God. That is, if we faithfully live a Jewish life, observe the rituals and ethical teachings of our tradition, we will, in fact, become a holy people. And according to Yeshayahu Leibowitz, that was the big mistake that Korach made in the Torah portion we read this morning. In our Eitz Chaim Chumashim, at the bottom of page 861, our commentary tells us that Leibowitz sees Korach's demagoguery exposed in his claim that all the community are holy. That is, we have achieved our goal, and nothing more needs to be demanded of us. The Torah's position is that all the community is challenged to become holy, and that, as it says in Leviticus, it is a future goal, not a present boast. And several chapters later, in Numbers 26:11, we learn that the sons of Korach did not die. Leibowitz pushes his interpretation one step further based on that verse and says that this teaches us that such people exist in every generation, claiming that just being Jewish means they're already close to God as they have to be. True messengers present themselves as unworthy of the task, as Moses did at the burning bush. In other words, Leibowitz reads the statement that Korach's children still live as saying that in every generation there are people among us who think that we are holy by birth, we are already holy, and we need do nothing more. You can almost be guaranteed that anyone who claims to be holy is almost certainly not. Of course, most of us don't go around saying, I'm holy, or because we're not as obvious as all of that. But I'm sure that we can identify people who act as though they are holier than thou. And sadly, we still see today people who believe that their race, or their gender, or their religion, or their nationality, or their sexual orientation is inherently superior to anyone else's. Don't get me wrong, I love Judaism, obviously. I have studied it now for most of my life, and I think it's a brilliant religion. But any religion is ultimately only as good as the people who practice its traditions and values. Some Jews, I'm sad to say, seem to believe that being Jewish is a genetically superior condition. Goyim, the non-Jews, are somehow inferior. Perhaps this idea crept into our people as a response to the constant anti-Semitic assaults that we experienced in the diaspora over the past generations, the constant taunts that we were actually inferior to others in the countries in which we lived. But nevertheless, Leibowitz reminds us that not only is this Jewish response disgusting and even childish, it reminds me of two 5-year-olds arguing about who's smarter or who's stronger or who's bigger. It's also akin to Korach's claim to holiness, and we all know how that turned out. Judaism is rather designed to challenge us to try to become holy. The more we fulfill our mission, our duties, our responsibilities to God, and to seek to make the world a better place, the closer we come to being a holy people. Similarly, I love the United States. I was born here, and I've lived here nearly my entire life. But clearly, we have a lot of work to do as a society. This pandemic has exposed the deep divide in income, healthcare, housing, and even the availability of food. Some of us are blessed with jobs that we can do at home on our computers or phones. Other people don't have that option. Many jobs in the hotel, restaurant, travel, sports, and entertainment industries, for instance, are all but shut down. Many people have no savings at all, not because they were unwise in saving up money during better times, but because they barely had enough money to provide for their daily needs. There was nothing left over to save. Yet the Torah commands us to love our neighbor as ourselves. We're commanded to help the poor, the widows, and the orphans. Will we live up to these ideals? Or will we be like the children of Korach and believe we are already holy? We are, in fact, holier than thou. But let's add here another insight of a midrash on the Korach story. The midrash imagines Korach arguing with Moses over two mitzvot in particular. At the end of last week's Torah portion, we learned the mitzvah of wearing tzitzit, fringes, on the corners of our garments. One of the threads is supposed to be colored with blue, techelet. We'll get into why another time why it's not colored blue now, but originally it was supposed to be colored blue. And the midrash imagines that Korach asked Moses if having an entire garment dyed of this blue techelet would exempt them from having to have the fringe with the blue thread on it. And Moses says, no, that doesn't exempt the garment from needing the fringe. The midrash then imagines that Korach challenged Moses a second time. If a house is filled with several complete Torah scrolls, does it still need to have those two paragraphs from the Torah stamped on the doorposts of a house, the mezuzah? And again, Moses answers, no, it does not exempt the house from having those parchment attached to the doorposts. You still need to have the mezuzah there. Why would the midrash single out these two particular mitzvot as the basis for Korach's challenge against Moses? These two commandments about fringes and about mezuzot have two things in common. First, they are both part of the 3 paragraphs our tradition has brought together to form the Kriya Shema, the section of the Shema that we recite twice every day. And the second thing they have in common is that they are both mnemonic devices. They are both supposed to remind us of all of the commandments. And here is the crux of the issue, I think. The Midrash makes Korach out to be someone with little sensitivity to the meaning and purpose of commandments. Making a garment entirely of an expensive blue dye is not likely to remind someone of anything. It's just a color choice, and a luxurious one at that. But putting fringes on a garment, fringes that are themselves unnecessary, and then specifically dyeing one of those threads blue, that would be something unusual. That is something that would cause a person to stop and think, which is what it's supposed to do. because it's supposed to remind us of God's commandments. And we could say the same for having a bunch of Torah scrolls in one's home. Having a bunch of scrolls is just like having a bunch of books in the ancient world. I have a bunch of books on my shelf too. Most people today have bunches of books on their shelves. Perhaps scrolls were more expensive back then because they had to be written by scribes, but nevertheless, a book is useless in the house unless it's opened and read. So what is the point of putting the parchment on the doorpost of your house? So that it reminds you every time you leave your house and go out into the world that you're supposed to behave and be loyal to God and God's word and be kind to other people in the world, be honest and fair in your dealings, and be kind and compassionate to the people you meet. And when you cross the threshold and enter your home again, you pass by the mezuzah, and it reminds you again that at home you need to behave and be kind and compassionate, just and fair in your family dealings. Korach clearly did not understand the purpose of the mitzvot, to act as reminders, and the reminders are designed to teach us to live up to the standards of the mitzvot in how we conduct our lives. In short, they're reminders that we're supposed to strive to be a holy people, not reminders that we are holy, as Korach asserted in his rebellion, but that we strive to become holy when we remember to fill the mitzvot that God has given us. We have a lot of work to do in our society today. Part of striving to be a holy people is also recognizing the spark of holiness in every human being, because our Torah also teaches us that all humans are created in God's image. That gives every one of us a spark of holiness that we must nurture. Every human being has a special talent, a special aptitude, a special gift. No one is holier than thou. If we remember that, when we look upon the mezuzah on the doorposts of our houses or the fringes on our talits, we will remember our mission to act as God's agents in realizing the will of God here in this world. Being holy is a lifelong goal to strive for. It is a condition we will never really achieve. But if we encourage each other to keep trying, we can still change the world. Shabbat Shalom.